Hey guys, it is Neb-J, and in today's video I will be discussing 5 of the most important buffs and nerfs that are needed coming out of the Star Wars Battlefront 2 beta. Please do note that I will not be discussing elements of the game such as loot crates and the squad system today, as these have already been discussed in depth. Instead, I will be keeping this focused on the balancing of heroes, reinforcements and classes within multiplayer matches. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 most important nerfs and buffs that I believe are needed for Star Wars Battlefront 2. So at number 5 we have the Specialist class, and now the reason this is number 5 is because DICE have already announced that they will be making changes to it, so it's already been addressed, but because it had such a huge impact on the beta, I did want to list this one. So the reason this class was so overpowered and broken was because of the infiltration ability. Now the infiltration ability, as I'm sure you guys are aware, basically, it allows players to see enemies on the radar as permanent dots, and it also scrambles enemies' radar. So straight away you have an advantage there because they can't see anything on their radar, whereas you can see their exact movements. Also, it gave you the EE4, which is one of the most powerful weapons in the game. It's a 1 or 2 hit kill on most troops, maybe a 3 or 4 hit kill on a heavy, but if you get headshots, it's going to put them down in 1 or 2 bursts. Now the EE4 is fine in and of itself, I would say, because it is part of an ability, so it should be powerful, but the fact that every time you get a kill, it refreshes the EE4's cooldown, meaning that if you keep on getting kills with the EE4, then it can basically go on forever until there are no more enemies around you. So to solve this problem and to make the class more balanced, I think there's only a small couple of changes that they really need to make. So the first one, I believe, is with the radar. So rather than seeing enemies as a continuous dot on the radar, what I think they should do is change it to be sort of like the scan pulse from Battlefront 1, where it flashes every 2 or 3 seconds and reveals enemies on the radar. So rather than having a continuously updating radar, every 2 or 3 seconds it shows enemies as a dot, where it updates on the radar and you see their position currently. So it doesn't move, it just stands still. And this is sort of similar to the UAV system in Call of Duty. And I feel that it gives the other players more of a chance to actually catch the person using the ability off guard rather than being able to see where they are at all times. And obviously the second part of this would be taking away the refresh ability every time you get a kill. So every time that you get a kill with the EE4 currently, it does reset so you can use the ability for longer. But I believe they should just completely remove this feature. Give them the EE4 for the set amount of time, and then when that set amount of time runs out, then it goes back to the normal gun. And this is how the Vanguard currently works for the Assault class. And trust me, you do get killed by that a lot still. So I believe that that is the solution for the Specialist class, and that is how they can balance it out. In the 4th spot, we have Flame Troopers and Wookiee Warriors. Now, this is also in the 4th spot because DICE also have addressed the Flame Troopers, but they have not addressed the Wookiee Warriors. So they've already said that they're going to make changes to the Flame Trooper, but basically the Flame Trooper reinforcement and the Wookiee Warrior reinforcement currently cost 3,000 battle points to redeem and to use them as a reinforcement in a match. Now, when you compare this to the Jet Trooper and the Rocket Droid or the Rocket Jumper from Strike, I believe these guys need a big buff because currently it feels like the Jet Troopers and the aerial reinforcements are more powerful than the Wookiee Warrior and the Flame Trooper. So the Flame Trooper is incredibly weak currently, and I think he needs some big buffs to make him really effective and worth the 3,000 battle points. The first Flame Trooper ability is a cooling cell type ability where, when used, there'll be a set amount of time where the actual flamethrower cannot overheat, so they can spray it for as long as they want without it actually overheating. The other abilities are the Incendiary Grenade and the Health Buff, so these are pretty good abilities on paper. But the worst thing about the Flame Trooper is his actual flamethrower. So anyone who has played as a Flame Trooper will know that the range on the Flame Trooper's flamethrower is absolutely shocking. It probably reaches like a maximum of 2 meters in front of the Flame Trooper, which makes him absolutely useless in anywhere that isn't a confined space. So anywhere out in the open, anywhere where he basically isn't camping corners or hiding in some room somewhere, he is basically ineffective. So I believe the first thing they need to do with the Flame Trooper is to increase his range. I think they need to at least double his range to make him effective. Now, they also need to up his damage. So at close range, he's got some decent damage, but it's not really enough to make you go, wow, like, I want to play this class. So I think they need to up his damage at close quarters, and then when the range increases, just slowly drop off the damage to make him more effective, so he can actually do something outside in close quarters. He can use the terrain to sort of get into positions where he can still be effective outside. To make him really effective, I think they need to lower the cooldown on all of his abilities. The abilities take quite a long time to refresh, so I believe if they lower the cooldown, then they will make him a much more effective reinforcement. And when you couple this with an improved flamethrower, I actually think this reinforcement will be quite a powerful reinforcement and worthwhile. Now getting into the Wookiee Warriors. So the Wookiee Warriors are quite similar to the Flame Trooper. They have the Thermal Imploder ability, the Double Bolts ability, and the Health Buff ability, and they are actually way more mobile than they were in Battlefront 1. In this game, Wookiees can roll, so that is an awesome benefit of playing as a Wookiee Warrior. I think these guys are definitely stronger than Flame Troopers, but they are still too weak to warrant the $3,000 battle point price tag that is placed on them. So maybe slightly increase the cooldown on these abilities as well, similar to the Flame Trooper, because the abilities are what assists players with getting the most kills. So using more Thermal Imploders, getting more time to use that Double Bolts ability, and getting more health buffs so that you can push forward and help your team more. On top of this, I do believe that the Wookiee Warriors Bowcaster does need a small damage increase, and I think it needs to get a little bit of splash damage, because currently it has very minimal splash damage and it feels like you have to hit enemies at least once or twice on the torso to get a kill. Now this is pretty difficult because you have a very slow fire rate with the Bowcaster, so you need to be much more accurate than any other class. So I think they should allow it to be sort of like Battlefront 1, where when you play as Chewbacca, you can just shoot at the toes of enemies, get that splash damage, and get the kill. I also don't think that a small increase in fire rate would go astray. I think that would be a much welcome buff for the Wookiee Warrior so that he can use more Bowcaster bolts to down his enemies. So overall, these two classes are pretty underpowered right now. I do not think that they warrant the $3,000 price tag that is put on them, and they just aren't someone that you really want to play as at this point. So they definitely need to make these guys more powerful to be more attractive to those players on the Battlefront. So now we can get into some juicy stuff that DICE hasn't actually discussed at all yet. And third on my list is Han Solo. So overall, I think Han Solo is a pretty good hero. I think he's been really well redone since Battlefront 1. His Detonite Charge ability is amazing. It gets you some amazing multi-kills. I believe his Sharpshooter is a pretty decent ability as well. It's very powerful against heroes. But the one ability that he has, which is actual trash, is the Shoulder Charge ability. Now, I don't know about you guys, but every time I use this, I felt like it just sucked. First off, when you use it, it zooms in and reduces your field of view, so you can't actually see as much of your surroundings. You can't see enemies, and you can't exactly see where you're going or where you're heading. It's basically you get tunnel vision whenever you use this ability. The other thing that I don't really like about it is how long it goes for. So obviously this is good for certain situations when you might be trying to get away from enemies or something. And the reason this is so annoying is because it is harder to direct than just normal looking and moving. So your turn radius is sort of restricted. It's much longer, so you can't do sharp turns like you would when you were just running normally. And the reason this is so annoying is because if someone's shooting at you, or you want to get into a certain building or doorway, people are shooting at you and you can't even get in there because you're turning so slowly when you're using the shoulder charge. And the only way to cancel the shoulder charge early is to roll. Now obviously this is good for people who know the trick, but there are plenty of people who won't know this trick, who want to be going somewhere with a shoulder charge, and they'll be getting absolutely turned into mince by enemies while they're trying to run into a certain place, but they can't because their shoulder charge animation is going for so long and curling them into some place that they don't want to go. Also guys, do correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that Han's shoulder charge does not do enough damage to kill a regular troop. I believe it might only kill specialists because they have the most reduced health, but I'm not even sure it can do that. Also, I don't think that it does actually knock over regular troopers. I know that it does knock over heroes. I've seen this with Darth Maul. I've been playing as Darth Maul and I've been hit by the shoulder charge and it knocks you over and it stuns you, which is actually a good perk of the shoulder charge. But I have seen footage where Han's shoulder charge did not knock over a battle droid, so it's interesting. It's really weird how it knocks over heroes and not regular troops. If it did knock over regular troops, then I feel like it would be so much more effective because you could knock down a whole bunch of enemies, maybe throw a Detonite Charge and get a mad multi-kill. It would be so much better for crowd control compared to how Han Solo goes now, where he does get overwhelmed by enemies. So to fix this, all I would do is maybe reduce the field of view on Han's shoulder charge. I don't really know why they did zoom it in. And also I would make it so any enemies that you do hit, you knock them over so that they cannot shoot at you when you're trying to get away, or you can just knock them over. It's crowd control so that you can get more kills and take out a bunch of enemies. So coming in the second spot is the aerial reinforcements. Now this includes the jet troopers from the Republic, the rocket droids from the CIS, and the rocket jumpers from the Resistance and from the First Order. Now these guys are absolutely incredible. They're probably my favourite reinforcement to play as. They're so good, and the reason they're so good is because they are so mobile. When using this class, you can basically alternate between your L1 jump pack, your R1 jump pack, and your dash, which is the same button as a roll. So when you're using this class, you can basically be non-stop moving and jetpacking all over the map. and this makes it very hard for enemies to shoot you. Even though you have less health than a hero, you are much more mobile than any hero there currently is. And the reason this is so good is because enemies just cannot hit you. So the only change that I would make to jet troopers and all other aerial reinforcements is to just slightly increase the time that it takes for your jetpacks to cool down. So if you do this, then it means that you can't just spam the jetpack whenever you get in trouble. If enemies are shooting at you, you can't just press L1, R1, circle, L1, R1, circle, and so on. It means that you can get actually stuck in bad situations where you can die and that enemies have a fair shot at killing you. There have been some insane kill streaks with these reinforcements, guys. I've seen it firsthand, and I have done it firsthand. And currently I have a better kill streak with one of these aerial reinforcements than I do with Ray, which says a lot about Ray. And I do think that these reinforcements do need to be slightly nerfed, just so that they cannot be so overpowered with their mobility. Everything else about them is fine. I believe they have good solid damage with their pistols and their blasters. And I believe the refresh rate for the rocket is just perfect, so you do have to be quite accurate with the rocket to get a kill. So I believe these aspects of the aerial reinforcements are done perfectly. I just think that the jetpack abilities of these reinforcements does need to cool down slightly slower to make them less mobile. So coming in at number 1 spot, and one of the most important buffs that I believe needs to happen, is to Ray. So currently Ray she's alright. I would say she's right smack bang in the middle of the heroes. I'd say she's better than Han Solo. I think that Boba Fett and Darth Maul are definitely both more powerful than her, and they have the potential to get more kills and more streaks. And I think the reason for this is because of Ray's lack of mobility. Now she can jump, she can use her L1 ability, and she can dash using the circle ability. But when you compare her to someone like Darth Maul, she has less crowd control and less mobility. Now Darth Maul has the spinning attack, which closes the distance between enemies extremely fast. Rey has the L1 ability, which dashes forward with her lightsaber quicker than usual, but still not very quick, and you basically run in a straight line, which leaves you very vulnerable to enemies. Darth Maul also has the Force Choke, where he can pick up multiple enemies at a time and throw them down and immobilize them for a short time while he can go over to them and kill them. Rey does not have this. Instead, she has the mind control ability, which takes a 2 to 3 second animation for her to actually perform. Now this is obviously annoying because the only time you'd ever really want to use this ability is against another hero or against a bunch of enemies. But when you're versing a hero or a bunch of enemies, you don't want to be standing in the middle, waving your hand for a couple of seconds while they all shoot you or attack you. So there are a couple of suggestions that I have with Rey that can solve a couple of the issues that she does have. And the first would be to allow her to use her mind control and her vision ability while she's in the air. I don't know why they removed this from Battlefront 1, but in Battlefront 1, when you were playing as Darth Vader, you could jump up in the air and use all of your abilities, which actually made him much more effective because he wasn't standing and he wasn't a sitting duck on the battlefront. But currently Rey cannot use her abilities unless she's stuck on the ground, which means she has to go through the animation, giving her enemies time to attack and do damage. So all that I would allow Rey to do is do her top ability and her right ability in the air, so that when she jumps up, she can use her mind control, trick a bunch of enemies, and then when they are confused, she can attack them. I don't think she should be able to use her L1 charge ability while in the air because that would just look dumb. That wouldn't make sense. So I think it's just her top and right ability. She needs to be able to use them in the air to make her much more hard to hit and just make her abilities much more effective. If they don't do this, I think she could also go with a small health buff and a small increase in mobility. And this is just because if she's getting caught when she's using her abilities, she's getting hurt and taking a lot of damage. That extra padding, that extra health will help her out a lot, and also if she's more mobile, she can dodge attacks after she's used the ability more easily. So that is what I believe needs to be done with Rey to make her more effective and make her more competitive with the likes of Darth Maul. So that's all the suggestions that I have for buffs and nerfs for heroes, reinforcements, and classes coming out of the beta, guys. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions of your own. Write them in the comments, like the video if you enjoyed or you agree with any of the points, and I will see all of you in the next video.